everyone to our December 11th, 2019 regular board meeting of the Pullman School District. And I'd like to begin with a flag salute. You can all rise for that. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda tonight. Superintendent Maxwell, are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
No real changes, but there were some last minute updates, so I'd like to go over those in case you were not able to access your agenda earlier today. Updates to policies and procedures. There was a minor update to 6810P, updated the executive summary form for 6810. Minor updates on 6114P, the overall just formatting. Added 3213 as an action item. It was a discussion item, but we'll actually be deleting it. But when we get there, we can clarify delete it. There were two last-minute additional overnight field trip requests for wrestling, personnel report addendum, and then one clarifying section was added to the visitors section description, and that is the second sentence. Visitors wishing to speak must sign in on the visitor sign-in sheet, which is located up by our cameraman on the bottom sheet. Those are the only updates to the agenda.
I will move that we approve the agenda as updated.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as updated. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll move to reports, correspondence, and program. Our Pullman High School ASB representative was not able to be with us tonight. Is anyone here to report on behalf of ASB? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go on to board reports, beginning with Director Lee.
Sadly, no report tonight.
All right, thank you. Director Roberts.
No report.
Thank you. Director Everman.
No report.
Thank you. Director Tanner.
No report.
Thank you. I have no report either. Superintendent's report.
Just a couple of quick items so we can get to our audience. So just a reminder, thank you. So just a reminder, we do have a communication out. We do have extra hard copies up front. One of the things that we're trying to be very clear about is engaging with the school board. And this is a little flyer that we put together about people wishing to address the board, kind of outlines who can speak and the process. So I wanted to bring that for everyone's attention. We have had these out previous board meetings, but I wanted to make sure that we did have this together. So, and make a note of it. Also, just quickly, I sent out earlier today a summary of both the math, elementary math adoption committee notes and minutes, and the ELA English Language Arts notes for the minutes for the adoption. So if you have any questions of those, you can definitely see myself and Roberta. I'd be happy to have a conversation about that. Also, I did send this out today, the Engaged Scholar from WSU, really nice article on the partnerships that we've had so far this fall, and also referencing back last spring as well. So really nice little article if you have time to check out the partnerships. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much. We will next move on to program reports. The first program report tonight is the STEM report presented by Jennifer Harbour, our STEM/STEAM. Yes, please, thank you.
Thank you. I do have on USB with
Cameron is here to assist you.
That's fantastic. Well, he is, I printed out, I don't know, I think I have an official one.
May I have
Okay. Thank you for inviting me to come speak today. things to report. That's exciting. So the first thing, which you can see with the title, is this is the elementary STEAM and art at PSD. So one of the biggest changes that we've seen with the program is that we have combined the curriculum, and so specialists are teaching the STEM components and the art components, and then instead of serving all the students, we have split up, and so
I can do it from here, Jen. Just tell me.
oh,
Yeah, I can do it. Just tell me when to.
oh, I got it.
You
Is
got
that
it?
me?
Okay.
Okay. So you can see the top says how we are in charge of developing, planning, and prepping the STEM lessons, all K-5. And then we've added the standards for art as our responsibility for this position. We serve 4 schools, 2 schools per specialist, serving approximately 1,500 students as a whole. We also collaborate and communicate with all K-5 teachers, school staff, and administration. We also meet students twice a week now, which is different, for 40 minutes for 1 semester, and then we'll switch schools. So currently, I am at one school, and Desiree Gould is at Sunnyside. She will switch in January and go to Franklin. And then at Camiac currently, we have enough sections to add 1 more teacher. So we have Emily Dean, that's pictured there on the left. She comes in Fridays to take those sections. Gratefully, we have 2 spaces for that, so that works pretty well. And she'll just be there till the end of the semester, and then I am the full-time at Camiac, and then at the semester we'll switch to Jefferson. So being full-time at one school at a time has been a huge improvement. I feel connected to the kids, I feel connected to the community, and it's been a really great experience. So that's who we are. So here, I'm not going to go through all these, but I just wanted to put them in so that it's clear what we're kind of focusing on. So for the STEM components, science is taught in the classrooms. So they get that component in the classrooms. So where we started kind of developing this program was really focusing on the engineering design process. So taking kids through all the way from each step of the process and giving them experience with that. And so that's what these are. These are the process, the engineering design for K-2, then this is engineering design for 3rd through 5th grade. So in addition to that now, we have the Washington State's art standards. We've added those to the program. This is obviously, there's more to that, but this is just sort of the highlighted anchor standards. It is a little more elaborate just because art isn't required to be taught. Well, they do a lot of art in the classroom, but the art specialist is responsible for the lion's share of that work, and also is required to give a standard performance assessment. And so that we have a little bit more involved with standards that involve performing, presenting, responding, than when we just look at the STEM engineering design standards. So those are all there. They're on the OSB website, so if you're interested in learning more about those. One thing that we try to keep, so in the art standards have a creating component where they need to know the creative process, just like the engineering design process. So instead of making that really complicating and having 2 processes for kids to understand, we sort of kept with one, which I think works really well. This is the one we're using. It's used in all 3 art and STEM classrooms. In fact, it's been it's a 1st grade teacher in Camiac is now using it in their classroom. So hopefully it's something that kids are going to start to really recognize the process. Ask, imagine, plan, create, and improve. So we have our goals usually listed, and then you can see the picture of the classroom. The standards are on the board. So sometimes I'll show the whole the whole cycle. Sometimes we'll just be focusing on one, so they're interchangeable. We can just put one up and just say we're just focusing on imagining today or creating today, and then sometimes we show the whole circle to see how they all fit in together. So this is an example of what that stage looks like for the STEM component. We have a challenge, we have a place to talk about materials, what materials we're going to choose to use, and then a drawn out idea of what that will look like, and then you can see the process is, the idea is not being created quite exactly like the imagined plan, and that's okay. And then for art, that looks a little bit different, but it's quite similar. They have a place to draw what they imagine it'll look like, the purpose, why they're creating it in that way, the materials they're using, but then also we added the elements of art, so that we're identifying what elements of art that they are using or plan to use in their project. This is before they create. So this one is actually, well, I have some pictures later, but this we are diving into ceramics currently. So this was a ceramics plan, and I have some images of that in a minute. So we have some of our STEAM experiences, just some highlights. We've done a lot more than this, but one is we're in the middle of our circuit, our circuit unit right now. We have some really great hands-on games and games that really show kids how circuits work. They get time to solve problems and puzzle those out. And then we don't have these done yet, but this is an example of what it'll lead to eventually is them understanding how to create their own circuit. That's happening next week. I don't have the value, but we can just kind of get a sense of what that looks like. Then Ozobot coding is something we're really grateful that we have. Not all STEM programs get this opportunity, but I think it's a great way to give a huge age range of kids an access point to understanding what coding is. So in this particular one, not only do we want them to know what coding is and how to get started with that, but we also want them to communicate ideas to them. That's the point. So in this particular project was fun because this was at Kamiak, and we're still all learning what the expectations are at a new school and what all the spaces are at a new school. And so we drew maps of Kamiak, and then they had to code their bot to do what would be appropriate in those areas. So the gym, they could do turbo or whatever. And then in the hallways, we grew a little slower. So they were communicating how what the expectations in each area were. That's what that project was. Here's just a sled design. You can see our testing area in the room. Also a plan there. And then the one next to it, we've been designing new plants. Some plants even can live on other planets. So, and they had to have the 4 criteria, which is it had to have a way to spread seeds, it had to have a way that they got food, those kinds of things. They had to have a plan for how they're going to plant those components. And those are some of the final solutions. Art experiences, like I said, we're doing a lot of ceramics right now. So 4th and 5th graders are doing the fish, which has really been fun. We're real grateful, again, just like the Ozobots, having a ceramics program is pretty remarkable and special. And so that was our focus as a professional, kind of our professional growth focus this year, was to get Desiree and I on board with how are we going to do this with so many kids. So we're getting there, and it's been a really great experience. And this is they glazed this week, and we'll fire the glaze next week, and also before Christmas, I hope. And then we've got some mixed media as a way I found that we really utilize this short amount of time we have in the program and to give them access to different materials in different ways, using materials and experimenting with that. So that's a mixed media portrait project that they did. Mask making, Desiree has been doing masks. She's just knee deep in masks, and it's really, the kids are responding well, and I think she's mostly having fun. She's having a great time. You can see how much energy and effort she's put in to some of these designs. Another thing we both did was a collaborative school quilt at the beginning of the year. I think the art and program is a really wonderful place to build community for a school, and we used that that opportunity to build a quilt where we showcase how one is a part of it. Briefly, I want to talk about the Art Fest 2020 plans. This is another part of our professional growth time together. We are looking at a potential new location, not anything in stone. We love partnering with the city, but they're moving buildings. Also, being outside in the garage has presented challenges in the past. I haven't done this part of this yet, so I'm kind of listening to some of the other teachers' feedback on that. So that's one of the changes that I'm looking at. It's an all-district art show, K through 12. Students will select, so this is where we kind of hit some of those other areas in those art standards, where we look at responding and presenting. And so students will look at their portfolios, they will select via some criteria, one piece to show. Then I think it's the 5th year art participation. It'll be in May 14th through 16th. And it meets these areas. Standards 4 through 6 is kind of those presenting, performing, producing areas that this project will sort of fit. So it's exciting. It's really neat to see all those pieces together in one space, and also to watch those kids come in and see their work in a public space is a special thing. Program growth, so much. Like I said, combining the art curriculum with the STEM has allowed us to see students twice a week, so this has helped with our content retention, relationship building, classroom management, and the depth of study. Program has its own room at each school. That's amazing. So grateful. I think I was on a cart last time I was presenting to you, so greatly appreciated. Storage space has also improved at all schools, which with this program is important. Program is less isolated as a combined curriculum. We work together when we're able to kind of problem solve together. And it's also provided us an opportunity to really collaborate with the other teachers, the middle school and the high school teachers. So we really do feel a little bit more like a cohort, and our collaboration time has been more focused. Each school has also acquired a really good base set of tools and materials for the programs. I think we've done a really nice job of trying to make sure that's equitable at all the schools and that they're all getting the same experiences. And I think that that's happening. Growth opportunities. I think we need to continue working towards integrating with general ed classrooms. I feel like that's something I'd like to do, just understand where they are and how I can support them. I think the circuits unit is one that I'll probably keep for a long time because I think it's one that really does do that well. I'd like to find more. I'd also really like to find a way to kind of get a unit more on sustainability. Now that that's sort of an important focus for us. I think it's a place that we can do that in this program. How to meet the students' needs. This is ongoing, but we're trying to teach 21st century skills, and how do we do that? I think social emotional learning strategies are probably the most important piece in that. Being able to continue on when things get frustrating and things don't work. Critical thinking strategies. One thing specific thing I'm looking at getting added to my room, or all the rooms if we can, is adaptive materials. I have students that really need help with holding a paintbrush, and it'd be helpful to have some more adaptable materials in those classrooms so I can provide another access point for them. Preemptive planning with enrollment increases, especially at Caveat. I think, it's inevitable that we're going to continue growing, and having those 2 classrooms is great, but just making sure that we're thinking about what that enrollment's going to look like and how that might change. How many specialists we have, happy scheduling for that. So this is something that came up at our collaboration, was all art teachers are in K through 12 are very interested in integrating more technology into the program. I don't think you can do art without talking about digital anymore. That is where it is. And so looking at ways that we can do that would be important. And then I'm always going to ask you to consider your own program, just because for a lot of reasons, but 3 of them are listed here. And one is the state, we are required to do a state performance assessment. They have the least amount of time to prepare than the other specialist areas for art specifically. It will provide an opportunity for us to create research art instruction for social and emotional growth. Research is showing that there's a correlation between creativity and emotional well-being, and it's just an important thing. I think we need to think about how to continue bringing that into our program. And then I also feel like there's a need to embed a little bit more of the technology standards in a way that we can support students understanding internet safety and best practices for I just had a recent granddaughter that was alarming. So I just, as a parent, feel like this is really important, and also as a teacher, feel like this is a place, the STEM program is a place that can happen. But with 12 to 18 times meeting them, it gets a little tricky to make. And I understand we're all needing more time, but I just wanted to make sure that these points are considered.
In spite of your brief time, it's something to do a great job, Jen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for the support of the program. I know you do support it, and we appreciate that. Can I answer questions?
So when you say year-round program, what is that? Just daily classes? I mean, what does that look like?
I mean, I don't have the answer. I think that would look like, either meeting maybe once a week or twice a week as a year-long program. I mean, it would add specialists. It would also give classroom teachers another criteria. But more than that, I think that it's a way that we can really get to some of these deeper things within those areas. But yeah, that's what I mean. Adding more, a whole other semester of classes.
So when you talk about ceramics and you're talking about glazing, do you talk about reactions and why this heat is?
We do. I mean, to the level like kindergarten, first grade. We talk about more like this. Now it's more like a stone, right? Like it can last forever. And then we did. There was a video that I found that really showed the kiln process, because they don't get to see me put it in the kiln, because they were like really confused about it. So so we get to talk about that. And,
I love the way it's all integrated.
It's easy to integrate science and art.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our next report is Franklin Elementary School Student Showcase, and this is presented by Principal Stephanie Gray and teacher Nancy Nelson and Dominic Ventris.
Separate.
Oh, they're separate. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So thank you for having us. Before too long, I'm just going to turn it right over to Nancy Nelson. We have a program showcase tonight plus a student showcase. And we're going to start with our student showcase because it is getting late. And I presented the opportunity for staff for a student showcase, and Nancy had an idea that she ran by me and something that I saw in action. Really exciting having second graders not only write opinion papers but also persuasive and involve the community. We have Mr. Cooper in there, our custodian, fielding questions and hearing arguments and rebuttals. So really exciting, and I'm going to give it to Nancy and the students.
And I would like everybody to stand on the line and write. And I get Vivian, could you stand? You guys see how the road has a line? Make your line like I'm the top of the line. We're going to face that way. Yep, there we go. Vivian, could you come stand down here? No, it doesn't have to be many of us. No, stand on your line.
Wait.
And Vivian, I'd like you to stand on the end. And let's have, could you choose which spot? So Vivian, I need to see it. Rhodey, where's Rhodey? Rhodey, Don't worry, you'll have, even though you're in a different order, you'll get to do your thing. When I give you your paper, just take a look at it and make sure you're on the right paper. Sophia. Okay. Now go back to your line. Take your line. Okay. And color. And a single. Here. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to the class. Your audience actually, they look like this is the audience, but the most important audience. For the people who finished, all hold your papers so the papers will stay extra quiet. People who are still holding their papers, try to hold them extra still. And readers, keep your voices loud.
Dear Pullman School Board, I wish Franklin had more trees. We need more trees because they give us shade. They also give us air and oxygen. And plus they are beautiful. The trees give fruit. May I ask you to plant more trees? Sincerely, Sophia R. Dear Pullman School Board, I wish we could have more trees at Franklin. Trees are beautiful, especially in the fall. I've always wanted more trees at Franklin. When we went to look for the room for trees, I tree. Trees give oxygen, trees make me smile. Trees give shade, trees have food. I wish we could have more trees at Franklin. From James. Dear Pullman School Board, it would be great if you could have trees at Franklin Elementary. Who would please have a tree at Franklin? If this was what I live for, there would be Dear School Board, our school needs more trees because trees give shade, warm air, and oxygen. Food, birds, nests, animals, we really need more trees. Dear Pullman School Board, our school needs trees that give us an oxygen. The trees make tree houses. The trees give us fruit and animals. The trees give us apples and trophies and nuts Dear Pullman School Board, we need more trees at Franklin Elementary School. They give oxygen. Trees also give shade to playing and talking. Trees are very important on sunny days. Animals can act like umbrellas on weather. Thumbs up. Dear Pullman School Board, please plant more trees so we can have oxygen and shade. If we have trees, we do not get harmed. Thank you for listening. Sincerely, your Dear Pullman School Board, trees are easy to plant. You could grow them in the greenhouse and then transplant them in the field. Trees give shade, trees give air, trees attract people. Trees can make new play pictures. Please plant more trees. Yes, it's called Golden Thank you for coming here tonight to listen to our wonderful school wedding. We sure hope that you can put up plenty more trees at Franklin Elementary and at all the other elementary schools in Pullman. Any questions? Have a wonderful night, everyone. No one did any questions.
We have been working on these things for about kind of off and on for 2 months, and it was so interesting in that when we went to our final preparations for you, how many people decided to rewrite their letter because their handwriting had changed and their words had changed? A lot of us. We were so much we had to redo our letters. But I think the important thing I want you to know is that we really mean everything we say. Let's say it together. 1, 2, 3. Please plant more trees.
I love the elementary school.
And yes, all the elementary. Were there any questions?
I have a question. How many trees do we need to plant?
1 million?
The reason we had an answer for that is we practiced this morning, and when Mirabelle said, any questions, there was one of the students who was asking exactly that question. How many questions, how many trees do we want?
Have you thought about what kind of trees to plant?
No. All kinds. Some kinds. I think that all kinds. Not apple trees. Yeah, we had apple trees. Apple trees.
Are there any other questions?
What is the best time of year to plant trees?
The best time to plant anything is when the shovel is in your hand. But I can also say that any time that it's cool and it's raining, today would be a perfect day to plant a tree. Every day is a perfect day to plant a tree. Shovel in the ground.
Well, we want to thank you all for coming and sharing your beautiful letters. You obviously did a lot of great research about trees and explained to us many, many benefits that would not benefit not only you, but future students and our whole community. So thank you very much for all your work and for coming here tonight.
Shake their hand.
Of course. How would you like us to do it?
Just right there.
So can you, Fine, you're going to be the leader?
Thank you. I don't bite. I like it. Good job.
Great job.
Right here. Bye, Sophia.
No, I really don't have because the art.
Stephanie, just proceed whenever you're
So, and the reason why we were going to do this at a work session, but it got rescheduled. So we're going to go with our program. So this is our intensive learning center at Franklin Elementary, and I'd like to highlight our Franklin Academy. And here to present tonight is Dom Francesco and Karina Anderson, Natalie Dobbins, Megan Antoni, Christina Johnson. Dom is going to be our presenter. We have our support team as well. And I just want to thank the Pullman School District for having this program. It's helping so many of our students. And without further ado, Mr. Dom.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to be able to present our program. Like Stephanie said, I'm Don Ventresco. I am the lead special education teacher for our Intensive Learning Center. The Intensive Learning Center was designed to be able to serve a very specific population of our students. specifically more students that have higher significant behavioral impacts. My program specifically does serve essentially the top 1 to 3% of our students who do have significant behavioral impacts. And so what I wanted to do tonight is to be able to go through what does the program look like, what is the main structure of it, and what is our ultimate mission. So, as well. So my mission objective. The ultimate goal for the Intensive Learning Center, or ILC, is to be able to provide a more structured environment, more so than what the general education setting can provide, so that our students can learn how to make socially acceptable decisions throughout their day. My small environment allows our students to have access to a higher teacher-to-student ratio, which then allows us to be able to give our students those opportunities to be able to practice those skills that we can continue to learn and to be able to ultimately bring out into the community. Essentially, my strategic mission is I want my students to work me out of a job. I want my students to be able to gain these social skills so that they can continue to make independent, appropriate decisions while they're in the general education setting. So the ultimate goal for all my students is to be able to exit them out of my program so that they can be able to access general education with their peers with minimal to no adult support. Okay, thanks. All right, appreciate it. So how do we do this? Well, typically instead of asking about whether the glass is half full or half empty, we take it deeper and think about what's actually in the water. And so what we mean by this is we need to put an emphasis on trust in the relationship with our students. 3 key ingredients that makes this successful. 1 is consistency, 2 is kindness, and care. When we can have all 3 of those ingredients, things are smooth sailing. And so through building our relationships and the understanding of our students, we're able to then build individualized programming for each student within the more structured environment. The relationships and programming allows our ability to build on each individual student's strengths so that we then can continue to practice those skills to ultimately have them be contributing members of our society. Always thinking what's possible for all my students. My main goal is to always provide them with those foundational skills so that they can be successful in the community. So, my first layer of my program, the foundation, schedules and goal group. So, as everyone can kind of see here, is it okay if I walk up? Cool, thanks. I have my main daily schedule on the board every day. You may see that there are 2 different colors. That's because the students in my program, they range multiple grade levels. And so I have been able to group students mostly by grade level, and I form them into 2 different teams. And so each team has their specific schedule written here on the board, and it allows us to be able to navigate our day. And on top of our schedule, as we have sections of the day, I go over here to my checklist. I break up those blocks into even smaller pieces for us to be able to follow through and be able to go through our day and manage our time. It's mostly to keep me on track, but the students really find a lot of benefit in that. Having a very consistent program every single day is crucial. I work very hard to make sure that our schedule is as consistent as possible. There are flexibility moments that do come up, and those are great teaching opportunities, but to be able to give the students the appropriate opportunities is very important to have a consistent day. So that's what we value. Another piece that we do value in my program is what we call goal group. And goal group, I have a separate board in my classroom, is a time for reflection as well as a time for students to take ownership. So the idea of goal group is that each individual student gets to think of a skill or something they want to earn, something they want to be better at, and we focus on being able to practice to do better at that one thing that day. I typically structure my discussion for that as, hey, do you want to earn something today or do you want to be better at something today? Typically the students will choose one or the other, then it facilitates a conversation about what do we want to build on. And so that's my first column, is what the actual goal for their day is. The next column over in the middle is what is their plan? How are they going to work towards that today? I structure that conversation with, do you want to give me some strategies on how you want to do that? Or I refer to my social emotional curriculum, which have specific characters, or I ask them, do you want to pick some thinkables to help you solve that today? And again, it's just kind of facilitating that dialogue and that conversation, and students are able to make a plan for themselves about how they want to accomplish that goal. And then finally, the third column with the check mark is I ask them, are you committed? Are you ready to do this today? So kids say yes, great, put a check mark. Kids aren't ready, that's okay too. I leave it blank, and then when they are ready, I go put a check mark. And then the third column there is another layer of my program. Every student gets a job within the academy, and so I do have specific jobs within the room that work towards one of my reinforcement systems, and then that is where I list out what the objectives for that choice today. Next up, now this is the next layer. It's my bread and butter. So, every student, well, let me begin with this. I have two reinforcement systems that work very parallel with each other. One is my passport system, which incorporates points and works towards our larger scale reward times. That is my main reinforcement and motivation for my students. Is I have two built-in, we call it passion, times, where based on students' behavior as well as academic participation, they earn points. And if they reach a certain average benchmark on those points, they earn certain privileges and rewards. Students get to cash in their points once before lunch, once at the end of the day. So we have two separate times where we get to cash in. My passport, every student gets a new passport every single day. And we have a 1 to 4 point scale. A 1 would symbolize unsafe behavior, not necessarily meeting expectations at that time block, things like that. A level 2 is, yeah, you met my expectations, but boy, I had to remind you a lot. Frequent reminders. A level 3, which is our top of the point scale. We strive to have 3s, that is, you met my expectations. Maybe you had a couple reminders, but that's okay. 3s are what we're reaching for. 4s are above and beyond. I do not hand out 4s very easily. Typically, if a student is able to earn a 4, they're showing me independence. They're able to transition independently. Or if another student is having a difficult time in the room, they're showing an ability to control themselves during that time. That's level 4 behavior, above and beyond. And so, what the students do is we have a morning subject and afternoon subject. This is where they write in their schedules. And so, on the previous slide, when I had my board, here, there's our main schedule written here, but then what you'll notice over here with the numbers, those are abbreviations of the time block, and that is what I model for my students to write on the passports. And so, every morning, as part of our morning plan, once I go through our schedule check and our morning routine, I pass these out, and it is expected that students fill out their passports and to be ready for the day. And so, once we have our schedule put in, then that is where we get to assign points. Now, I have two different categories. I have a behavior category and an academic category. It's very important that we separate the two in terms of points because it allows students to understand that there can be differences between the two. So for example, let's say a student is participating in my math group. They're sitting at the table, they're very safe, but they don't do a single piece of work. That's okay. I will give them a 3 for behavior because they were safe, they sat in my group with me, but they're going to have a 1 for academics because they didn't produce anything for me. Or vice versa. Let's say it takes a student a majority of the block of time to transition to their next block, but once they eventually get there, they're able to complete the work in the last 10 minutes of the group. Well, I give them a 3 for academics, maybe 1 or 2 for behavior though, because the transition is really tough. It's very important that we separate the two in terms of point values because the students are able to pick up on those things, and it's very valuable to them. And then it also gives us even more specific data to be able to track, are there any trends with maybe specific subject area where they're having low points for academics. Okay, well then what can I change for instruction there? If they're having lower behavior points at certain transitions, okay, what do I need to do to adjust their programming to make them more successful? It's a great data collection tool for us to be able to adjust programming. And so that is our passport system. Now, my next reinforcement system is my classroom economy. I do hand out classroom cash. Classroom cash is one they get paid for the jobs that they choose, as well as it's a tangible, quick reinforcer I can give the kids just in the middle of teaching for positive behavior. I'm going through my morning plan. Hey, thanks for sitting at the table. Nice job. Hey, you started with your passport. Good work. Here's $1. That type of thing. Kids accrue dollars, and then I have what's called a snack store in my program. We have snack store twice a day. And so kids get to buy food items from the snack store with that cash. Another piece I want to mention about the snack store is my students actually run that. 2 or 3 of the jobs, one of them supply manager, another one cashier, another one Roomba. Those kids are assigned those jobs, and so they run the snack store themselves. Another opportunity where they get to have responsibility, they get to take ownership of something, and then we get to reward them by paying them. So, thanks, Bob. So that's my main bread and butter. The passports, again, I want to emphasize the importance of the passports because it provides all of the structure for our day, but at the same time too, it provides my team and I consistent language with all of our students. We're always able to be objective in our language when we refer to students or when we're trying to de-escalate them, things like that. And so it's a very powerful tool to use. Now the passports, they get to be used with our leveling up system. Now, so this is a picture of my entire classroom, and I had one of my staff members and we came up with this idea of structuring this flow of levels to symbolize a video game. That's just how it's looking. But the idea of each student is leveling up based on their daily averages on their passports. Okay? And so all of my students, they were able to create characters, and they have characters on the wall as they're moving through the program. This is a visual and a consistent data tracker of all of my students in the academy. So if anyone were to want to come in and say, hey, how's Jimmy doing? He's on Independence level 63, so he's actually doing really good right now. We're working on these types of things. Each section of this game board is associated with specific skill sets that we're focusing on. So for example, my first section here is belonging. We're working on becoming a participating member of a group. Those are the types of skills that we're really trying to work on. It's the very beginning of the program. We're getting established with expectations and routines. Based on daily averages, I have a key that I built that gives us data ranges of if they get a certain score here, this is how many steps they move up. And as they move through the program, the expectation moves up with it. So for example, in belonging, if you were in like a 1 to a 2, you moved up two slots, 2 to a 3 slots. It's pretty easy to move through belonging. That's designed that way, because we want them to get established in the routines, right? But as we move forward, say we get to the blue section in independence, or the black, which is generosity, the expectation moves up. You got to get a 3.2 or a 3.5 to move up 3 slots. You get a 2.8, you move up 1 or 2 spots, that type of thing. But the idea is, as the expectation is growing, so are the students. Their abilities to be able to access general ed and independence is growing with it. And so, this is our, like I said, this is our consistent data tracking of all of our students for where we're at. Like I said, the first one's belonging. The next one is mastery, which is where we're starting to work on some self-discipline skills, self-control skills, continuing to work on being part of a group, things like that. Independence, that's where we start to expand it a little bit and work on more self-discipline as well as leadership skills. And then once we get back into generosity, that's when we're focusing on how do we give back? How do we be proactive and want to give back to our community, take care of our people, that type of thing. So, with that, I'll take any questions and feedback.
That's overwhelming information.
Yeah,
I think it's
I'm
amazing.
sorry for the amount of it, but
No,
No, it's awesome.
No,
It's
it's,
fabulous.
it's
I don't
very-
know how you handle it
it's
all.
very comprehensive.
I just, but more power to you that you can make it work, because that's a lot of detailed work that you're doing.
Thank you. I do want to emphasize too that it's definitely not just me. I put a big value and thanks to my team, Natalie, Karina, Stephanie, everybody. The success of this program is because of how all of us have been working together, and I want to put a lot of value into that, and so I think that is why we are at the spot we are. So,
Amanda had a question.
yeah,
It looked like you had about 6-ish students.
I have 7 currently.
So is there like a range that you try to keep the group within, or does it kind of depend on where the students are within the group, how many you can handle at a time?
I guess I want to hear your question again. I don't quite understand.
So do you try to keep it between like 5 and 7, or does it depend on what level the students are at the time? Like you probably can't take 7 that are just starting in the program at the same time. As some are.
So programmatically in total, ideally, our max would be 10 students.
Okay. And how much support do you have in the classroom?
There's myself, and then I have 3 paraprofessionals.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
Great.
And so we did a lot of research going into developing the program, and we felt that student-to-teacher ratio was very successful in the research that we did.
You
It's
should,
amazing.
you should give presentations on this. This is really fascinating structure you have built here. I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So is
Good
it
for
just
adults.
is
Yeah.
this your first year of doing this, or you've done
Yes, this is the first official year of the program. I did do a little trial run last spring because going into this year, a majority of the
team is giggling over
A
that.
majority of the students were already on my case though.
Yeah.
And so that gave me actually an opportunity to kind of do a little trial run in a lot of the main building last spring. And so I credit our success to being able to do that because with it being December, we're really fine tuning some pretty small details, which I feel is very successful.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, that's where we're at.
good. looking forward to a progress report because I think it sounds fascinating.
Okay. Let's come back.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Good job.
Good,
So,
teary eyes.
thank you so much for giving Franklin a little extra time tonight. Really just want to say thank you to the board and to the support team and the special education department for really having this be a program. It is an area of need, and it's something that we have found a team in place that we can ask for better. So thank you, and you have a great night.
Thank you. All right, our next report is student care services, and this will be presented by our district nurse, Michelle Hyatt.
I don't have anything clean to look at, so this isn't me.
And by the way, you guys are free to leave at any time you don't. Well, not Megan, but.
Megan
We'll
is
stay
here
for
for
Michelle.
life.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have anything to show. I feel like I should have prepared something like that. But so I am the lead district nurse, as you all know, and we have 4 nurses currently again this year. When Kamiak opened, I thought, great, we'll have 1 nurse at Kamiak and Jefferson and 1 nurse at Franklin on Sunnyside. We did end up having a child who needs a nurse full-time at Franklin, so we had to pull that nurse to Franklin full-time, which leaves me with 3 elementary schools, and it's been fun. It's been a lot of work, but Kamiak is beautiful, and that's one of the schools that I have. And we have a full-time at the high school still, and at Lincoln as well. I ran a report, and I'm always kind of surprised at the number of visits we have each day on average. The elementary schools average about 8 to 10 visits per day. Most of those are recess visits, little cuts, scrapes. Some are needing to change their clothes, but most are just Band-Aids, bumps and bruises, things like that. At the middle school level, the majority are social and emotional needs, and we see the length of stay at the middle school a lot longer. For elementary school, maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes. At the middle school, we're seeing 15, 20, sometimes 30 minutes before we can safely get that child across. And at the middle school, she sees about 22 kids per day on average. I don't know how she does it. She has 2 beds there. I don't know how. With confidentiality, she's having to put some kids, having to stay outside, but she goes with 1 and brings the other one in. So it's a lot of work. A lot of daily medications at the middle school, and some 3 diabetics that she takes care of as well. At the high school, some social, emotional, and a lot of bigger kids, bigger bumps and bruises, bigger injuries, some sports injuries, and concussion management, stuff like that she sees. And then thinking about some big changes. So this year, the change with immunizations was the MMR change, that you can no longer have personal exemptions. Didn't know what that would look like. We didn't have a lot of personal exemptions for that, but that went fairly well. We ended up communicating early last spring to those parents to let them know that they could no longer have a personal exemption with MMR. The vast majority then went to religious exemptions, which is just a signature from the doctor as well. The state is compiling this data right now, and there sounds like rumor has it in the next 2 years there will be no religious exemptions either. So that won't be
That'll
next
be
year.
interesting.
Well, that I think it'll be okay for us. We don't have a whole lot, so I think it will be like Seattle, thankfully. And now for next year, so the way the law is currently, when a child enrolls in school, they have 30 days to get us their immunizations. Many parents will say, well, they'll come from the other school, you'll get them that way. I mean, they've just moved, they don't have all their records. I mean, I was going to take that, I didn't have all my kids' records all the time. That is no longer going to be allowed. When a child enrolls, they have to immediately show that they have documented proof from a physician or from the something that I can access, a database that I can access, showing that their immunizations are actually there. They will just make updates, and they will no longer be able to fill out the cards and say, I got these immunizations on these days, and sign it and say it's true. They have to have proof that those vaccines were given. And there's no grace period. It has to be that day, except for the United kids will still have they enroll immediately. That sounds, at first there was applause to that, but thankfully, because then the work is going to be less, the beginning will be more, but we won't have to be tracking these families down. However, we have a lot of kids who come from other countries, and none of them are compliant with our system. I haven't seen one from any Asian country that's compliant with the United States. And we have the language barrier. So I'm working currently with the health department to get those kids immediately access to vaccines, free vaccines for those children, to get them enrolled in school right away. If they enroll, if somebody in the school accidentally enrolls them, then we do have to go through a process to get them out of school. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But the health department is so far they've been great. They're working with us. They've sent me a bunch of information on how parents can access in different languages and so far I think they'll be okay. They're talking about having a clinic at the kindergarten roundup, having a vaccine clinic, which should be nice. And then at the back to school, the packet pickups at the middle school and the high school having a vaccine clinic.
And that would be put on by the health department?
Yes. I don't know, Bob and I were, and Roberta and I were talking about, we're gonna have to talk to all of the providers in the area, because I don't know that I'm sure that they're not all aware of this change, so we're gonna have to talk to all of the providers, Colfax, Moscow, Pullman, let them know that they have to have these things done. Currently, if you call a provider and say, my kid has to have these vaccines and they've not been seen at that clinic, they have to be seen with a physical before they can get their immunizations, and that can take weeks. So we're really counting on the health department to help us out with this.
Is the health department the one that came up with the rules?
The state. So the WAC and the RCW were different. One of them said they had 30 days, the other one didn't. So now they're aligning them so that they don't have 30 days.
The state should follow through, right?
Well, they need to, I think they're gonna need to fund the health departments, especially in these rural communities, and have more nurses and give these shots. Currently, they're only giving shots on Tuesdays. That's not gonna work.
Yeah, it sounds like you're forcing doctor visits on people, I mean, that's, and so with insurance and all the other things, that could be a pretty significant cost.
Now, vaccines, in theory, they're free for children. Anyone under 18 in Washington State, they're supposed to be able to receive vaccines at no cost. However, the health department charges, I'm not really sure, and I don't understand where that is coming from, but, and then we also have the problem of undocumented families. They are afraid to bring their children to any of these. If we have a clinic at the school site, that fear may be alleviated a little bit. I don't know. Some of the pharmacies also give the vaccines, but typically those are MMR and varicella, not polio, hepatitis B. So we'll see how that goes, and next year I may have more gray hair, but
That sounds.
Why we have Clairol.
So the proof that parents have to provide, is that if the records aren't updated in the state database, or is that outside of the database, all parents have to provide proof of immunization?
if I can access it, or if somebody can access it, even the parents through there's my IR, they can access it, and they can bring it to me, then that's proof. And every state has something like that. I only have access to Washington State.
Okay, but if you find them in there, then they won't need to
Then they're
provide.
okay. Right, and then also the records of the doctor's office hand them with their stamp. That can be proof as well.
Because I know, actually I had to deal with this recently, and I found that Pullman doctor's offices, and I won't name them, don't consistently enter records into that state database. And so in the outreach that, you said you were going to do, you may want to mention now that it's kind of a higher importance, that they need to put those things in there like immediately.
They're getting better.
Yeah, I know, I just had to track one of these down for just my own kids, right? And so I'm just thinking about that now. I ended up having to go to a doctor visit and all that other stuff, and so it just sounds like we're forcing a lot.
The health department, they're entering them as well. They want to train me how to do, but right now I'm trying to.
It's a little loaded.
Yeah, like I said, we'll see how it goes. It's just so important to get these kids enrolled. The language barriers, the health department is assuring they have access to the majority, if not all of the languages in here.
So will the current records that are handwritten and copied or whatever be, are they like grandfathered in, or does all students that enroll have to provide the proof?
They'll be grandfathered.
Okay, so it's just
They're
new
already
incoming
enrolled,
students?
they're already, yes, they're already okay. That's it. Oh, that would be.
Yeah, I was like,
I quit.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and also if they give me the CIS, like you guys are ready, or, are familiar with, where you fill it out, and the doctor looks at it and signs with their stamp and their MD number, because there were forges, in other districts with the, yeah. So they have to have their, not only their signature, but also their ID number that we have to look at. But if they sign that this is all correct, then we have to believe that that's correct. So.
And do you think, under your current resources, that you're going to have trouble managing all of that next year? I mean,
Not with the great bosses. Well,
that's an excellent answer.
in the summer, I'm around all summer. I work most of the summer anyway. I'll be going into the schools they're going to be setting aside. I'll go in weekly to different schools to make sure that we can get the kids enrolled before the beginning of the year. It's going to be a lot of education, a lot of outreach to preschools and daycares for the kindergartners coming in, and
Actually, Michelle and I have met, and we will be meeting with Shannon, our communications coordinator, in January, to know every month sending something out. So it's not a surprise, even though we know it will still be a surprise to some degree, but we're going to really try to be proactive in our communications out, letting parents and incoming new parents aware of the new immunization enrollment regulations and stuff.
And some states already have this, for Nevada already has this, I believe they're one state, and some other states already have this, so it's not. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Michelle.
All right. And next, we have our special education services update presented by Megan. Oh, and Christine, I'm sorry, I took so many notes that I couldn't.
All right, and Christina Johnson, our Assistant Director of Special Services. Definitely want her to be up here and just as visible with me, because she's a huge part of all the changes that we continue to make in special services. So this is just our mid-year review with you guys. So we're just going to go through really quickly our WASA update goals and what we've been doing thus far this year to work towards those goals. So regarding our formal decision tree, which is actually our very first goal, what we've worked on this year is really establishing clear guidance for our school-based mental health services and how to access some of those services with Dr. Boots, as well as really working on, for example, the ILC entry procedures and then exit criteria as well. So students, in regards to the students who will benefit from DOMS programs, what is that a measure of? How do we determine that? So that we're looking at students similarly across the board in the district. So those have been two big areas of work for us. The next place we'll continue to work is around adult support. So working with a decision tree to say, how do we determine how much support a student would need to successfully access in schools? A big part of that is having a spectrum of programming to meet kids' needs, so that we're meeting it with programming, not just adult support. That second goal, goal 9, moving from compliance to our instruction focus. Again, this year we got our determinations in November, and we are a level 1, which means we meet all requirements for the state. It's definitely something that was highlighted on our WASA review, so it continues to be true for us, which just means we continue being compliant in all those requirements and special services at the state level. So those determinations come out this fall, but were for last school year. Christina is going to be certified in the Consistency Index platform as well, which is a statewide system, which is what they really use to look at compliance of school special services and individual student services. So we're going to be running all of our paperwork as well through the Consistency Index platform, which will just continue to help us with that compliance component. But after 10 screened records, it actually also gives us a pattern or a trend. So if we're seeing errors in that, that allows us obviously then to fuel that PD back to our staff to look at those specific trends or issues. Christina, this is all Christina, has created a ton of transparent information for our community and staff on the Special Services website. So if you go through our website, going through Special Services, you're going to see a whole plethora of information that Christina has gotten up, again, just to increase that transparency, but also make sure that we have that shared understanding as stakeholders, both our families and our schools, to make sure we're all talking that similar language. You guys want to talk about acronyms, Special Services, it's acronym kings and queens. So we want to make sure that information is available to our families at all times so that they can answer any questions they might have. Oh, thank you, sir. Probably one of the most important goals is looking at our performance data for these students. These are our most at-risk students in school in regards to their academic performance. So continue to look at this group, look at those embedded goals at the school improvement plans. So when you're looking at those SIPs with principals, they all have that subcategory around students who receive special services. So really making sure we're looking at that and then monitoring those students' progress through those subgroups and through the statewide report cards. So those are big pieces for us, as well as specific programs like our reading program, Read 180 at our elementary school level. That gives us continued data back as well about students' progress so we can adjust that. Click. Third. Click. And then goal 26 was really a two-part. One being that alignment of our intervention programs with our general education curriculum and how students access that. So the immense amount of work that is going currently into our adoption committees at the elementary level for reading and math. Special education staff are on both those committees, so we're making sure we embed that, and we're doing that right from the forefront. And then as well as, I think this is, I have to say, Dom, got a little teary-eyed as Dom was presenting because our department has put tremendous work into the implementation of a broader range of programming for students. And the ILC is one example of that. That is one way we can really meet the needs of students who have significant emotional and behavior needs in our schools, especially that K-5 setting. That was a population of students we were having a hard time getting to with really direct services in 4 different buildings. So to be able to watch that program not just start, but be as successful as that Franklin team has made it, has been tremendous. And I thank you for acknowledging his work in that. It is awesome. And it's awesome to watch students succeed. I go in for visits and I'm usually overwhelmed by being welcomed into that community and just all the students that are so happy to be at school every day now. That's when we need to be reaching that population of kids is K-5. So to watch his work is amazing. We've also had an AM and PM preschool session right now of our developmental preschool. We have a need for it. And then of course we've created the Developmental Learning Center over at Kamiak, which really mirrors the developmental preschool, looks at being able to collaborate with our middle school program as well as our transition program at high school. So this is probably one of the biggest areas of pride I have in my team. They've taken this on and they are really doing some hard work and we see it in matching kids' needs. So I was really overwhelmed by Dom to watch his passion for those students. That's an exceptionally difficult job. So he comes to his work every day with a smile like that. And we all say, yes, Mr. Dom. And so do the students. So, yes, Mr. Dom, I will level up. But yeah, you guys can imagine how much work it's been in implementing a spectrum of program for us. So it's been a huge step, and we're just excited to keep moving forward.
Yay, make it.
Thank Christina. Thank Christina. I can't thank you guys enough for having a team in special services, so, yeah.
Thank you very much. And the next report is our human services report.
And that would be me. So I'm Dagny. Yeah. So I want to thank Dagny and Lanny for putting this together. This is something we had talked about in years past about doing kind of an annual report. So we've given some reports, but this is a little bit different. We wanted to try to dress it up a little bit and really just concentrate on some of the key facts. We put the number of, obviously, employees and broken down by which groups. Employees, certificated staff, you can see 203, classified staff, 160. We have a little bit of a breakdown, which is really helpful when we have to fill out our employment reports. They want to know what the demographics are. Active substitutes, you can see how many subs that we currently have in each area. I think Joe is counted as one of the 2 substitute bus drivers, and probably John Milano is the other. So if you do know someone who's interested in driving a bus, please let us know. Custodians, certificated staff, you can see we have 48, but of course they also usually substitute in other districts as well. So that's always an area that we're trying to recruit. Nurses, we do have 3, and classified staff is about 45. Volunteer growth with the start of implementing some tracking software that we have in all the schools. We're just able to see how much our volunteer growth has just increased dramatically when we really have a good system to track it now, and also I think the level of engagement that's occurring in our schools and the invitations, just a dramatic increase just from several years ago. So I thought that was fascinating. Just kind of an update on our collective bargaining groups and our status, so you can just see when the next ones will open. We do have, you notice the Pullman Education and Support Personnel. It says pending ratification. That was like almost a year and a half ago, but it was approved but never signed off, and so we've been trying to get the signatures and get the rewritten contract. But it is a fully functioning, operating collective bargaining agreement, but we don't have the official signatures. So as soon as we get that, you can see the dates that those are open. We also wanted to give you a little visit to our recruitment, hiring, and retention. This past year we had 972 applications for 132 jobs, and that's 132 includes teaching, custodian, transportation, food, nutrition, maintenance, etc. You can see when the applications are submitted, and as you know, we're using an online application system finally, and so that was one of my goals 7 years ago. So I'm really excited. Just the application, applicant education levels is also there. Also gives you a nice printout of the demographics of who is applying for our positions when they're open. We also wanted to just include the career fairs that we typically visit each year. We might skip 1 or 2 depending on what our need or projected need may be. Also shows how many new district employees were hired. And including a support for success, these layers are primarily supports for success for certificated positions, but next year we plan on updating this so it's more reflective of supports for success for all working groups, not just teachers. But this was a fun project to work on, and hopefully you liked the format. And if you have feedback for us, please let us know. But I think this really encompasses the main pieces that we wanted to share with the promoting our first annual report.
Whoever designed it did a great job.
Lanny and Dagny have all the credit.
Yeah, you should tell them. Absolutely.
I could claim it, but that would not be.
No, I would.
We wouldn't believe you.
I wouldn't believe it anyway. Courtney may believe it, but
She's new yet.
It was very visually engaging.
Well, there's a lot of information, just, presented well.
Yes.
Yeah, we wanted to present it in the key pieces in a nice visual format, so that was kind of one of our goals.
It helped. Very nice.
Yes.
Other than bus drivers, is there another area that has a shortage?
Nursing is always a
Bus
shortage,
drivers and nurses?
and certificated teachers.
Oh, no, okay.
In nursing, we have gone from having 0 substitutes
It's a 30.
to having 3. I mean, it's a real celebration for us to know that we have someone, because we have, in 3 of our buildings, we have to have a nurse there. And so if we don't have a nurse in those buildings, then Michelle has to cover. And then that means she's not providing services in the 3 buildings that she supports. So we're so much better than we were in the past.
And custodians, we're always looking for custodians.
Is there an open nursing position that's unfilled, or do we just not have a line for another?
Right now, we're kind of at the we're at stable what we have. Not that we can't always use nurses, but finding a nurse is really difficult to hire. So
And we don't have an opening right now.
right now. Yeah. When we do, we're really happy that we have 4 right now. So, but it typically is very challenging everywhere across the state. So,
Are we actively recruit for those 4 areas on the website?
we do. We accept applications year round.
Okay. And next, we'll have Joe Thornton, our Director of Operations,
I'm glad you don't have a PowerPoint, Joe, because I'm still loading the packet. So.
give us,
And you for the second one. I don't understand why you didn't want to keep the second graders around for the inventory. I don't understand. So, as we do annually, we give you an update on how we keep track of inventory. Not a whole lot has changed from what we do at the end of each school year. We ask that each classroom, each office, each area is inventoried so we can track what that equipment is. A couple changes that have happened this past year is we did make a change to policy 6881 and procedure 6881D, which allows us to identify those things that are considered of 0 value, and they can go immediately to salvage or to disposal. That's going to be predominantly e-waste. And on the back of that package, you'll see the form we are using to track that material. As we are collecting materials identified, and then 2 people who know what the value might be in the district are going to have to sign off on it as 0 value. Any questions about inventory? And with that, moving on to transportation, I do have a PowerPoint for that, Bob, if you can see that there. And here's the Cliff Note version of that. I do apologize for taking longer on the transportation reports than I normally would. I probably picked the wrong evening to do this, but this will also be quick. I want to start by saying thank you for, second slide, thank you for the support to purchase those 9 buses over the past 2 years. That has been huge in helping us to move forward where we need to be. Moving on to staffing, we have 21 staff in the transportation department, Kenny Lemons, Bill Dolph, Jason Hendricks, and then we have 18 drivers. So currently there are 2 subs available. The challenge, of course, is they also do other things, so they're not always available. One is a student, one is a farmer, so they sometimes are busy doing other stuff. We do have 5 other staff in the district who are certified to drive a bus, and that includes Stanley, Bill, Jason, John Morano, our maintenance supervisor. Tomorrow afternoon he's going to be driving, he's always wanted to do it, and myself. The challenge for all of us is if we're pulled off to do that, it complicates us doing the other things that we are supposed to be doing. By the way, I want to say that last spring break I completed my CDL training, got my license. Yeah, that's what the transportation department said, because it only took me 2 years. But 2 things I want to point out. A, it was more challenging and more stressful to pass that than it was my writtens for my master's, number 1. Because I could DS my way through the master's. Yeah. I couldn't do that for the transportation. And then secondly, this gives me a whole much greater appreciation for what those drivers do. Driving that bus, bad weather, with yesterday or Monday when I did it, 52 elementary kids sitting behind you. Something you would never do as a teacher. With 52 kids, just turn your back to them. Yeah. That's what we ask drivers to do. So, yes, we are short drivers, and we are actively recruiting. We have a couple of people that are sniffing at the hook. We're trying to set that hook before they get away. So we're trying. Moving on to the next slide, talking about the fleet. We have 10 support auxiliary vehicles, 7 vans and 3 Suburbans. The addition of those has been huge, especially in days like this. If we have someone who needs to go somewhere, and we can send them in a Suburban, that is wonderful. 3 of the vans are 10-passenger vans, which has been a great addition because that allows us sometimes to send vans to an event instead of a bus. So, for example, state cross country, state volleyball, soccer, when they went to the west side, took 2 vans as opposed to a bus. I can send 2 vans cheaper than I can send a school bus. And I'd rather put those miles on a van than on a school bus. So we have 25 buses. 4 new buses were purchased in 18-19. 5 new buses were purchased this year. That's a total investment of about $1.1 million, so thank you. But of that $1.1 million, we had a grant that offset about $315,000 of that, so that really made that possible. But one thing I do want to point out, which is very critical, is 2 years ago when I was talking to you, you probably heard me say every opportunity I could, I was worried about the age of the fleet. So 2 years ago, we had 40% of our buses were older than 15 years old. Now we're down to only 4% or older than 15, and none of our buses are 20 years old. So we are moving in the right direction. In an ideal world, I know we don't live in an ideal world. In an ideal world, the minute a bus is off of the depreciation schedule, which is about a 13-year schedule, the minute we stop getting reimbursed from the state for that bus, we get rid of that bus and replace it. That's the way it should work in an ideal world. Diane and I talked about that. And that will keep us from getting behind like we did. Some people ask us, next slide, why do we have so many buses? Why do we have 25 buses when we only have 18 routes? Well, one of the reasons is that sometimes in the middle of the year we have to do this, which you can't see very well, but that's replacing the kingpins in the front suspension of a bus, front axle of a bus. Has to be done. That takes that bus out of service for a while. The other thing is you can see this activity board. You'll see that tomorrow, for example, there are 4 buses taking activity groups out of town after school. Well, by the way, if you do the math, that's 4 drivers who are doing that would normally be running regular routes. So pretty much we're going to be tapping into those 5 district staff who can drive a bus to cover that. So that's why we do need that number of buses. Next slide, if you look at the mileage, this year the mileage went up from last year about 10,000 miles. About 4,000 was that on buses, 6,000 was on vans. The one thing I'm encouraged to see is that of our athletic and activities mileage, about a third of that was accomplished using vans as opposed to buses. So of that total, I think it's 75,000 miles total, about 25,000 was done using the vans and Suburbans versus using a bus. And there you see the breakdown of the percentages. And then next slide is ridership. And you can see that we are down a little bit on ridership for our regular routes. So that would be K-6 and includes secondary rural students. Here's the explanation for that. We took all those students that lived north of Larry Street that used to have to be bused, and now they are within walking distance of Cambiac. So that reduction in ridership is a simple reflection of we've added a school that's now closer to a bunch of kids who should be hopefully walking or biking to school. And moving on to the next slide, if we talk about new routes, so here's the thing I really want to emphasize this year, and this is a huge shout out to Tammy Lemons and Bill Ball for getting this figured out. They started working on it last year. Eric Hines was a huge help to them to get this started. I lied awake in August worrying about whether or not this was going to work, and it did. And it wasn't perfect, and they're still fine-tuning it. We're making some adjustments, picking up a group of kids at Cambiac right away after school, having that bus run them home, and then circling back to pick up another group of kids. So we're still fine-tuning it. But it is amazing that Tammy and Bill were able to get this to work. And the advantage of it are, last year at 340, we still had a whole bunch of elementary kids sitting on buses at the transfer station waiting to go home. Those kids who live in Albion now, they've been home for 15 minutes by that point in time. So as a rule of thumb, every kid is getting home sooner. Our discipline referrals from the elementary levels for students is way down because they're on the bus and they're riding with their schoolmates, not with kids from 2 other schools. So that's been a huge positive thing for that. And we've eliminated that morning and afternoon crazy chaotic transfer. Any questions?
Great job.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you for the support. By the way, the one thing I want to tell you is if transportation works properly, it's invisible.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're not always invisible. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Joe.
you, Joe.
All right, the next part of the agenda is the visitors section. This part of the agenda is for anyone wishing to speak before the board, either as an individual or as a member of a group. Visitors wishing to speak must sign in on the visitor's sign-in sheet, so hopefully everyone has signed in. Visitors addressing the board will go to the microphone and state their name and address prior to presenting their information. Did you not get to sign in?
I'm slow for you.
It's okay.
You were busy.
And we've implemented this new thing, so this is a good demonstration and heads up for future meetings. We'll continue to announce this for a while. Must state their name and address prior to presenting their information. The board will listen and may offer clarification, but will not discuss the topic at this time. The board may consider moving the topic presented to a future meeting date as a discussion item. Please keep your comments civil and respectful and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Individual speakers may not gift their time to other speakers. And good job. Okay, our first speaker tonight is Meg Pullman.
Good evening. We just watched this awesome program next door for music programs. Julia Jitkov, who's actually a ballet dancer, was out there dancing. It was amazing. So we have some awesome music programs. So blown away. So my name is Meg Galnick. I reside at 1510 Northwest Arcadia Drive in Pullman, Washington. So I'm here today to request for the board to look into a possibility of Mr. Vince Hanley that he can help with the Victor Club. So at this point, my son's a senior. We've got some other seniors that are going to be competing in regionals, state, and nationals, and they are not prepared at this point. VICA has been canceled a lot, or it's held a very short amount of time. They are not prepared. And I did talk to Justin about this, and he thought it was a great idea because Mr. Hanley is also willing to just help with VICA and to help Mr. Schatz go with equipment or like equipment questions. There's a lot of coding and things that go on with the plasma cutter. There's a lot of really technical things, and so Mr. Hanley said he would be willing to do that. And so as Justin said, he used the analogy, so when you want to get a basketball scholarship, right, you're going to practice, put in a lot of extra time, do all this extra work to go above and beyond and get a basketball scholarship, right? Well, it's the same with the welders, but the welders can't do it at home, right? They can't do it in their driveway, right? They have to do it in the shop. And so we really need some focus on that because at this point it's not happening. And the kids are getting really frustrated and they're feeling very unprepared. And we do as much as we can at home. We've got a few welders and things like that, but there really has to be something going on in the shop. They have plans, they have very specific plans that they have to follow for these competitions, and things should be prepared ahead of time before they get into VICA, and so that they can work on those plans. And so that's just not happening. So and I know that Mr. Schatzko has a young family, and he's new, and I imagine that's difficult for him to want to put any extra time into VICA. So just to try to make it the best of both worlds for everyone, because I think it would be extremely beneficial to have Vince, 36 years of experience, help Mr. Schatzko, his former student, in the shop, and then help Vic at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Meg.
Okay, the next speaker is Melissa Ryan.
to bring to the board some concerns that I've had. We are, as a family, meeting with Mr. Polstad to address the shock concerns. Recently, I also want to address the article in the newspaper that was put out about our shop. Not only was it not filled with all the facts, but it also put kids on the spot that had to choose between their former teacher that they loved and adored and the teacher that's now giving them their grades. And I don't think that that's really fair to do of any of our students. So I would like the board and the district to just be aware of that in the future, because that can really put kids on the difficult spot. Mr. Schotzko, I think, is doing the best he can. I think he was given really big shoes to fill. And one of the things that we have approached you guys about in the past is letting Mr. Hanley be there to transition somebody. And ideally, we would have liked Vince to stay on for a little bit longer to transition a new teacher, and obviously that didn't happen. But like Meg said, we have this opportunity now to bring Mr. Hanley in and work with these kids. And I think that's super important. The kids are getting extremely frustrated. I will tell you that my son, who placed in welding as a freshman last year, didn't see a set of plans until 2 weeks ago, and they have regionals coming up in February. We can't expect any of our athletes to practice for 2 hours a week and produce state championships. And sometimes it's not even 2 hours a week. The other problem that we're seeing is it's held right after school. So now kids that participate in football, basketball, wrestling can now have to choose between one or the other, which is not fair. And Mr. Hanley was definitely one in a million, and I know that's going to be hard, but he held practices until 9 o'clock at night and more than once a week for those kids that were participating in other things, and gave them that opportunity. So that needs to be addressed. And kids' scholarships are on the line here, and they're just not getting the available time. They're not getting the adequate teaching, and I will say that there's extreme safety concerns that are going on, and I will address this with Justin in our meeting. And not only, safety concerns, but you've got second-year students teaching first-year students. It's a big job. It's a really big job, and I'm glad that you guys have hired somebody else to come in because they need it, but we have a lot of work to do still. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is Doug Ryan.
Doug Ryan, 261 Flat Road. I'm glad to hear getting some new trees. It's always good. Unfortunately, you got a problem with your shop. I think you were warned, and it's falling apart. I got a son that's dealing with this. He's in the program, and he's really, really struggling. It's sad. But hopefully we'll get those trees growing. And by the time those kids get up here to the high school, there won't be a shop for them. The way things are going. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. And Nancy Nelson.
Nancy Nelson, and my address is 804 East E Street in Moscow, Idaho. And I wanted to speak as a member of the Sustainability Committee that I've been serving on since it was created. And I know that this evening you're looking at a policy that is for energy management, education, and conservation. And I just wanted to let you know how focused and specific the committee has been and the things that they're proposing. And I think this policy is a really good one. It reflects the priorities of especially conservation of resources and conservation of energy use, reducing our impact and increasing our environmental education, which will meet state standards of environmental sustainability standards, that are Washington state standards. It's I'm so pleased that we're looking at measurable outcomes for sustainability. I think not only will it benefit the district in its use of resources, it of course benefits all of the students, all of the families, and all the people that live in Pullman. So thank you for supporting it and continuing it.
Thank you to everyone who spoke. Next, we'll move on to our consent agenda. To expedite business at a board meeting, the board approves the use of the consent agenda, which includes items considered to be routine in nature. Any item which appears on the consent agenda may be removed from the consent agenda by a member of the board and voted on separately. The remaining items will be voted on by a single motion. Tonight's consent agenda consists of minutes, personnel report, professional and personal services contracts report, warrants, overnight field trip requests, budget status reports, ASB fundraisers, and 12 donation. Is that what? No, that's okay. Okay. All right. Now entertain a motion regarding the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll move on to our action items. The first action item tonight is policy 2418, waiver of high school graduation credits, presented by Assistant Superintendent Roberta Kramer.
Thank you. I think that the last meeting I was home very ill, and
It's nice to have you back.
it's good to be back, and I appreciate that Bob was able to present these for the discussion. 2418 is a policy related to House Bill 1599, graduation pathways. Previously, the principal could waive the credit, but now this new law, it has shifted that language out of policy 2410 and into its own policy 2418. And our district will begin implementation of this as soon as the board adopts it. It won't go into effect for our current seniors. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I don't hear any questions. Is there a motion?
I move we approve 2418, waiver of high school graduate credits.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve 2418, waiver of high school graduation credits. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Roberta, the next policy, 3205, sexual harassment of students, prohibited.
I will admit that when I was home ill, I was watching the board meeting, and I enjoyed Bob's presentation of this one because I knew he wasn't as familiar with it as I was, but if you remember, when you look at the executive summary, this was a matter of an old policy, the contents of the old policy being really old and already embedded in another policy, so we had to strike through that, and then it was replaced with 3205 that is now sexual harassment of students prohibited. And so this new policy, the language was in another place. It serves the purpose of making sure that our students are in a safe, secure environment. And so if you don't have any questions, I would urge your passage of this policy. It also helps us to meet our requirements related to the consolidated program review. With the CSER.
I move approval of 3205, sexual harassment of students prohibited.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve revisions to this policy, including its complete renaming and reworking. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right. Thank you. Next, 3211, gender inclusive schools.
This policy included updates, including the change of the name of the policy
and ensuring training of staff and volunteers, and then the appointment of the compliance officer, which is one of the many things I'm a compliance officer of. And so I ask for your approval of that policy as presented.
Do I hear a motion?
I move approval of policy 3211, gender inclusive schools.
Second?
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve revisions to policy 3211, gender inclusive schools. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right, thank you. And 3213, sexual harassment.
So 3213 previously included student and staff sexual harassment. Now this policy is being deleted. In place of it is the new 3205 and 5011.
Switcheroo. Is there a motion for deletion of this policy?
I move to approve deleting policy 3213, sexual harassment.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we delete policy 3213. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? No one has expressed an opposition, so, okay. Thank you, Roberta. Stand aside while Superintendent Maxwell presents 4215, use of tobacco, nicotine products, and delivery devices.
So we get the good stuff here. So policy 4215, the use of tobacco, nicotine products, delivery devices, was last revised in 2014. There have been updates to this policy mainly due to a change in the law, which now will make the age 21. So there was a minor title change, modified the language to include vape products, modified language to read any person under the age of 21, because January 1st will be 21. And the use of the term minor was replaced. Those are the only changes.
I would move to approve policy 4215, use of tobacco, nicotine products, and delivery devices.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve revisions to policy 4215, use of tobacco, nicotine products, and delivery devices. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right, thank you very much. Back to you, Roberta, for policy 5011, sexual harassment of district staff.
So this policy is specific to staff, and because I am the compliance officer for sexual harassment, Title IX, I'm here to present that. It did include considerable updates, including definitions, investigations, staff responsibility, and notice and training. I believe that we are implementing this policy already as it's written, and I'm very confident about where we are with this in our system, and so I would ask for your approval.
Was most of this in 3213 then?
No, 3213 was just really outdated. We had 5011 as well, but 3205 let us do is separate the staff and the students completely. We needed to have updated this before, it just wasn't done.
Okay.
I move approval of 5011, sexual harassment of district staff prohibited.
Second?
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve revisions to policy 5011, sexual harassment of district staff prohibited. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right, thank you, Roberta. Thank you. Next, we've got Diane up presenting several related to medical leave, beginning with policy 5322, maternity leave.
Okay, we're asking the board to approve the deletion of policy 5322. This is the home health loss policy. It's now incorporated into policy 5404, which we will be asking you to approve.
And I noticed that you're also recommending deletion of 5329.
Yes.
For the same.
For the same reason.
Okay, so would it be okay to do a
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would move that we delete 5322 maternity leave and 5329 family medical leave.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we delete 5322 and 5329, maternity leave and family medical leave. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right, thank you. And next,
So we're
54
asking
is
the board to approve policy 5404, which incorporates the Paid Family Medical Leave Act, and the Family Medical Leave Act, and maternity leave all into one policy. This is the actual WASA policy, where WASA did not have policies that are previous to policies. This is basically cleaning it up, and it is an essential policy.
And this would be a new policy for us.
Yeah, well, we had it in two other policies, but not the paid medical leave act.
I move to approve policy 5404, family medical and maternity leave.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the adoption of policy 5404, family medical and maternity leave. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right, thank you. And final action item of the evening, policy 6112, rental or lease of district.
Policy 6112 involves some minor language changes. One is to have the word real in the title real, rental or lease of district property, to have real property there. It makes the statement that we need to, where the rent property needs to be fair market value, and it prohibits the carrying of firearms by either staff or somebody renting property.
I move to approve policy 6112, rental or lease of district real property.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve revisions to policy 6112, rental or lease of district real property. Is there any further discussion?
I just had a question, Joe, clarification, so just comes up in my mind about insurance. If the second party is renting a facility on school property, who covers the insurance?
They have to have, well, we're still carrying our, it's still covered our other insurance, but they have to have an insurance policy filed with us before they will approve that list, that use.
Okay, and do you oversee that?
Jennifer Hamilton, the fiscal office. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any other, there must be other policies that talks about violation of maybe staff carrying firearms?
Yes, but I'm not going to be able to cite that off the top of my head.
So, but it's not cited.
Yeah, and I think this specifically wanted to, the recommendation from the state here was specifically make sure that if we are leasing or renting property, whoever is leasing that has to abide by school district and state law, which is you cannot have a firearm, with the exception of law enforcement officers.
Thank you. That's all. Is there any further discussion?
I would move that we approve
No, I
policy.
think we already.
Did we already move? Okay.
Yeah, so if there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, thank you very much. And now, we've finally made it to our discussion items.
So I'd like to introduce from Design West Architects, Amy Brown Minden, who's been very patient, and I just want to remind you that this is the piece of property we're looking at out of Albion Road. We have a vision further down the road that this property could be multiple purposes, including the transportation center, maintenance, even possibly district office. It's way down the road. But right now our focus is on that transportation facility because of the grant money that we have hopefully available to us at that time. So those ideas about incorporating some other purposes of it, it will be further down the road. Right now the focus is to make sure that that 20,999 square feet that the state would allow us, that we have that designed carefully and we use the right terminology and how we identify all those spaces. With that, I'm going to hand off to Amy for an overview of the schematic design. Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes. I enjoyed the secretaries.
That's awesome.
Anyway, as Joe said, my name is Amy Brown Minden. I'm an architect here at Design West in the Pullman office. I've been in this office for 8 years. So this is by no means my first project, but it is my first Pullman school. Ned thinks you're such a great client, he likes to keep your projects for himself. He likes to keep your projects for himself, but he's so busy with the Lincoln Elementary School, he decided he'd bring some of this over to you. So thank you for having us tonight. So, recently, we just finished schematic design of the new transportation center. What does schematic design mean? Schematic design is really the first step of design. It's the very first place we go when we're talking about what you need, what the district needs. It starts really as fact gathering. We talk about the spaces that are needed, the project itself. What are the requirements of the project? What are the goals of the project? What are we trying to achieve with the money that you've allocated for this? So we take all of that information and then it morphs itself into a basic working site plan, and then a basic working floor plan, and then it even also gets into some elevations, which we'll get to here in just a minute. So.
You tell Bob next.
You just tell me yes.
Okay, great. So, starting with some of the fact gathering, there are some areas of concern. Those three photos along the bottom are some images of your existing space. It's very challenging. There are some real issues here that need to be contended on. The main issue for me is just safety. There's a lot of people working in this building, and it's very cramped. It's not quite safe. I think the director told me even once in a while a parent or a community member will come here to retrieve a child's coat or something in the lost and found, or to report a problem. If you've been in this building, you have to walk right by buses that are 10 feet in the air to get to the office. It's not safe. And we want to address those issues. So a couple of other issues. There's no space for driver education and meeting space. It's very cramped. I think you're all really aware of what we're talking about. Great space. The people are great. They're doing the best they possibly can with what's there, but I think they're not fine. So we go to the next slide. This is a couple images of the property that's already been purchased out on it's right at the Pullman Albion Road and Police Highway intersection. I'll show you when we get a little further. I'll show you a little bit further. And I am going to warn you. I put some numbers in the slide that I got from Joe, but they're not the same as the ones that Joe just told you. But they're close. So when he was spouting up numbers, I was thinking, oh no, it's not 100%. But they are pretty close. I think he said 25 drivers, and I'm saying 26 drivers. So anyway, this space really, it's a green site. It is very much just an open farm field right now, which basically means the sky's kind of a limit. I mean, we don't have any really restrictions out here. There's not very many. We can kind of address all of your project needs and requirements, and we have plenty of space to do it. So if you jump to the next slide, let's start with project schedule. So if you can see this very well, we are right here. This blue line here is the schematic design phase that we've just finished. And then right next to it comes in, it goes right into design development. Currently, this week we're preparing for the value engineering phase. Value engineering phase is required to receive the state funds. It's required to go for us to present our project design to a board of third-party professionals, non-biased professionals, to help us value engineer what's happening. So really that's what I've been doing all week, is getting your packages ready for the value engineering, which happens next week. But we're right on schedule. We have plenty of time to get this right. Like I said, we just finished schematic design. We will roll right into design development, hopefully once you get your approval tonight, and value engineering happens next week. So we're poised to keep this right on schedule. Next week. Okay, so here we go. Here's the most boring part of design, spreadsheets. And thankfully, it only happens in schematic design when we're doing the fact gathering. This is one of the first documents we start with. If you'd like to look at it closely, you can see it in your design packet. But basically, it's a list of every space that you need in the building. How many offices, how many bathrooms, how many buses, and how much space each one of those things allocates. So this is a tool that we start with right from the beginning to help us start with your building blocks. It is broken up to, a couple of these yellow lines are talking about some areas that will be paid for differently, and we'll get to that when we get to the cost analysis next. So we'll jump to the next slide. This is actually an aerial image of your area. This red dot there is the site. This is Pullman Albion Road. This is Highway 27, Pullman Highway heading north right out of Pullman. Schweitzer's right over here, WC's right over there. I think you're all pretty familiar. This little white building right next to your site is the P&W processing facility, packing facility. The site, there we go. So this is the very first site plan we've come up with. This light turquoise line all the way around here is your actual property line. So you can see we're not using the whole site. We're using a good portion of it, and we're proposing this gray area is the area we would actually pave where the buses would be circulating the building. The tan blocks here in this building are actually the building facility, and then we're also proposing over here on the side an actual fueling station. That's one of the major things that your current situation lacks. You don't have a fueling station for the buses. The buses are fueling at the push distributor on the South Grand, I believe. So putting a fueling station here could be really change the dynamic of the bus system. This again here, Pullman Albion Road, here's Highway 27. The property itself is quite large, 5.44 acres. There are two small lots here and here that, to my knowledge, have not been sold, and have probably not been sold yet. There are few plans for them yet. So you have an access road to your property on either side of these other two small properties in the front.
What is the topography? Is it fairly level?
It is not flat. It does have a total raise. It does have a total increase from the very front corner. From this corner to this corner, it gets higher by about 20 to 25 feet overall.
So there'll be a lot of dirt moving?
There is some dirt moving, and I'll tell you about it. There is some
sorry.
dirt. Yes. No, please. Ask away. No problem.
I have a question. I don't know if this is for you or for Bob. This was purchased before I was on the board. We clearly have easement for an in and an out, even though it's through two different pieces of property, technically.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. We actually will own the easement, and the others will have to pay us back to connect into it.
If you can see really closely, the property lines for these two are right inside your access road.
Can you see that? Okay.
See that little?
Oh, so those little blue lines indicate
Property lines. So blue lines are property lines. So there's these two small lots here, and then yours is all the way around, including your access.
And so, for snow removal, they would share the cost of that. We learned the second one. We learned a lot of things.
So, any questions on the site plan? We can go to the first floor plan. So next slide. This is the overall building floor plan. You see a couple of things color-coded here. On the far right, this is a drive-through bus wash. The bus drivers clean their own buses, and interrupt me if I'm wrong, but they clean their own buses on a daily basis. They have to as part of their job. Cleaning the outside, cleaning the inside, and keeping it maintained. They don't have much of a proper space to do that now. In a lot of the more modern transportation centers that we toured as a part of this, they have full bus wash drive-throughs. It's a great feature to have. In the dark gray on the right. In this next blue block here, this would be the main bus maintenance area, basically the shop, where all of the tire changing and oil changes and motor works and the kingpin replacement Joe was talking about earlier, they're going to happen in this large space. It's quite large. It is easily large enough to have 6 buses within it, 6 full-size buses within, as well as working space. And it has 3 storage rooms off the side, a parts storage room, a tools storage room, and a chemicals storage room as well. Then moving right to the left of that, this tan block in the middle, this will be the administration area, the business area. And the next slide shows it a little better, but let's finish this and then I'll show you it closer. So then this green block is, we're calling it the bus staging area. It's a very large bus garage. It will hold 10 buses, and light maintenance can happen in here. Headlights can be changed, windshield wipers. Minor things can happen in this space, just not major shop issues. And it's also going to serve as basically a bus garage, where buses can be kept indoors for various reasons. Then out here on the very left, this brown block, this is outdoor parking. This is covered parking. We're currently showing 10 buses in here and 18 buses out here. So that's, if you're doing the math, if you realize numbers, that's a couple extra spaces for fleet expansion and also for the other 10 vehicles that the district currently uses. The only part of this entire floor plan that is a bid alternate. What we'll define as a bid alternate is this bus covered parking. The plan for the bus covered parking is to build as much of it as you can afford, essentially. So what we'll do is we'll break this up into either 2 or 3 parts, and we'll get you a unit price. So we'll get you a unit price on it once we get to the bidding portion, where we can say, we can build 10 bays for this much money, and we can say, we have a total of this, so let's do 20 bays or 30 bays, however many you can afford. It's a way for us to keep this under budget for you. Okay. So this is a close-up of the floor plan of the administration area. It is quite an expansion from what they're dealing with.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So front entry right here. You come right in the door. You come right into a small reception lobby area. Right immediately to the left, we have 1,000 square foot driver's training and break room. That's essentially the size of this room. This room is about 1,000 square feet. So that room, it would be used for driver's training. It has a teaching wall in it, similar to the one we're using right now. They would be using it for training. They could invite other drivers. The room could be used for about anything. When it's not being used, it will be double as their meeting space for whatever the drivers need it to be used for. On the back half of it, we have a small kitchenette, and then a private driver's room. There's occasionally a need for the drivers to have a private room for phone calls or computer work. That's what this back room is for. So the dark gray, driver's area. Off the main lobby, we have a circulation right here that connects all the spaces, all the garages, and also we expect the drivers to enter the building from this front door, take them right to their space here, and then back here to their locker room and restroom area. From the front here, immediately to the right, they have a director and an assistant director, Tammy and Bill. This would be Tammy's office right here. This would be Bill's office right here. And then Jason, head mechanic maintenance, his office is here and opens into the garage, into the actual shop space. The one undefined area, I would say undefined, this tan area right here, currently we're calling it the dispatch and work area. The drivers have a need to, for various paperwork, things they need to do, and they don't really have a space for that. This is a work area for the drivers. And then we also talked about possibly, once you've expanded into this space, they may need to expand into the need of actually having a dispatch position, and that person would occupy this desk right here. So this is geared for expansion, essentially. And then along this back wall, all the green spaces, they are service spaces. There is a unisex restroom with shower for the shop side. You're going to have mechanical, electrical needs, custodial needs, and then these here are the main staff restrooms, the drivers, and then a locker room right here for the drivers as well. To the next slide. What did you do? Okay, so once we get all of your building blocks together, for lack of a better term, once we get all the building blocks of the plan together, the space adjacency is working right, the size is correct, we essentially start putting them together in what you see here as building blocks that turn into almost building elevations. You start to see how the garage doors lay out, how the covered parking is aligned with the small garage parking, then the admin area, then the large shop garages, and then this is the bus wash up on the end. So this is a south elevation. Essentially, this is the front of the building for all intents and purposes. And this is the west side. East side. The east side's quite plain looking at this point in time. And then the north elevation.
All of these sides.
Yeah. Yes. And then the north elevation is essentially the back side. We are just in schematic design. I realize this is really blank. We are working right into something that I think will be really great for you. We've set the building blocks in a way that I'm pretty confident works for what we need to do. So once we go from today, we'll expound upon it further.
So when you set up like the building area summary, this one,
Sure.
did you, how much research is done? And did you go and look at other garages that have been built?
Yes.
Or
We did several things. So we went, Joe and I, and Ned, Tammy, Jason, we went to a couple of tours. We went to Freeman's Transportation Center. Are you familiar with Freeman's?
Yeah.
We went to their transportation center. Freeman's is similar to what you need in size. They're a little bit smaller than what you need, I think, but it was very similar. And then we also toured Moses Lake Transportation Center, which is enormous and quite a bit more than what you need for your fleet and your district size, but it was very eye-opening to be able to see what other districts are doing and the expectations of other drivers.
Yeah. So have you designed a bus garage
I
before?
have never designed a bus garage.
I just, you always worry about forgetting something.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just, I don't know why I would think that. As I look,
No, it's quite all right. I have never designed a bus garage. I don't.
So would your value engineering people go through and they'll help you point out
They will,
what's
yes.
missing?
I have quite a bit of help in my
Get it done.
office, and Ned helps me on a daily basis with things he can say.
So you don't call it help, right?
Maybe, what's the word, arguing? Anyway, no, I haven't designed a bus
I'm
garage.
sure it's inspirational advice.
It is.
Yeah, it's good.
Yes, and we based this template that you're looking at off of other schools' templates to make sure that you have all the schools.
But it's also new. I mean, we know what we don't want, which
Right?
is what we have. So,
And then we also met with Joe and Tammy and Bill and Jason and talked to them about what they would like. Their expectations are surprisingly low.
I don't know why.
Their expectations were, they just want a bigger office and
reality.
a larger shop. Yeah, they were really easy to work with. So between looking at the places that we toured and their expectations, and then the templates that we borrowed from other partners, I think they're looking good.
Okay.
How much of the property is left after you consider the footprint of this current building? Like the area behind and
The total site is 5.44 acres. We will cover about, I want to say we will pave, and when I say cover, I say pave, meaning building footprint and paving. We will cover about 2/3 of it. But a lot of that is just paving so that when the back half is not developed, it can be developed later. The plans that Joe talked about, possibly moving maintenance out there and other things. The paving area in the middle will end up being shared between
a little parking lot for it.
Correct.
So that means huge stormwater abatement, though, doesn't it?
It does, and we do have a couple of stormwater retention ponds located with the civil, and we're working through that. Currently, we just need to manage the runoff into the detention ponds. The detention ponds have been running into the existing system that's out there that runs right along the outlet.
Good. Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else? Okay, go ahead. Okay, so let's talk a few numbers. This is always the fun part. This on the left here is your overall budget provided by CSG. CSG is your construction manager. The most important line to look at is the second yellow line. The second yellow line is the total construction cost line. You see it right here in this box in the second yellow line. Your total construction allowance for the building of this building is $7.7 million and some change. On the right side of this slide, we have a summary of the cost estimate that was just recently produced by our cost estimator. And if you look at this column I have circled in red, building construction costs $4,992,000. Site work comes in at $1.67 million. And then down here listed separately is the bus canopy, the bid alternate I told you about previously, listed at $555,000. That all totals, let's see the number down here, $7,226,000. That roughly means we're about $500,000 under budget at this point. It is good. I expect us to use some of that through design development as we develop this a little further, but I think we're right on track to stay under budget. We're watching the numbers pretty closely, and I don't think it will be an issue for us to stay under budget.
So the big lift will be in the shop area? The bus service and shop storage, the one lift or two?
Currently, the district owns one bus lift. As part of this project, we will provide them at least a second, and maybe possibly then.
The technology of lifts have changed and people have moved away from doing an in-ground lift. They're really expensive to do and they cause problems. So actually what we have now is a lift that's 4 individual units that you put in place and they're computer controlled and work in unison. And then those, so you, let's say that shop that's 6 bays, let's say you have 2 of those. Well, those 2 lifts can be moved to any of those 6 spots. So it's basically a portable lift. And it'll lift the bus in the air. It's like lift it up on these 4 forklifts, and Jason's very confident.
Guaranteed going up all at the same time?
Yep, exactly.
That's good.
They're very impressive. They don't. They just roll along the floor, so we don't have to do forklifts anymore. Things of that nature. They don't require nearly as much maintenance.
Yeah.
And this price includes the fueling station?
It does, the number, the 7,226,000.
If there's any protection you have to put in now for fuel tanks?
Yes, there is. The fuel tank itself, the canopy over it, we are planning for a 2-lane fueling station. It's one pump with a 20 to 25,000 gallon above ground tank. So above ground tank. It'll have 2 lanes, so buses coming and going can fuel, but it'll be one pump in the middle. Within, also, it's a 20 to 20,000 gallon tank above ground, and the tanks nowadays can be split. So if it's a 20,000 gallon tank, you can split that into 4,000 or 5,000 gallon chambers, or if you need some diesel and some gas. So the technology has come quite a ways in that regard. We don't necessarily design that. That comes as sort of a kit.
Yeah.
And we give them the canopy and the concrete pad, and they bring us.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else? And is that my last slide?
Yeah.
My last one. Anybody have any questions?
Go ahead, J.P. I had a couple. This is still a cooperative, Joe, with the other school districts, is that correct?
Yeah, so,
Carpal.
correct. So one of the things you'll notice in the executive summary, I very specifically called this the Whitman County Transportation Cooperative Facility. Because the Transportation Cooperative is really something on paper. But that's the facility that supports the cooperative.
So they wouldn't necessarily be storing buses there, they would be repairing buses there?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So we're not providing parking for any of them. I mean, they need their buses in their district, and that's where they roll from. But we are providing shop space, and they will either come use that shop space, or they will actually hire us to work on their buses.
Yes, let me throw this out. When I looked at the title, Whitman County Transportation Center, I thought of the county itself. Has any thought been putting in the Whitman County School Transportation Center?
Not that I've thought of. I think that the title of this could probably be something that could be very easily changed down the road.
Okay. The district is always looking for storage spaces. Have you thought about adding a few extra 1,000 square foot of storage?
Yeah, I think that's something we will consider to continue to discuss with the architect. We have to be very careful though that because of the grant, that this is designed as a transportation center. So all those auxiliary spaces start to make it really muddy. So I think those are things that we can look at adding later, or perhaps designing it as a good alternative. But we have to be very careful about how we design that 20,999 square feet. Don't ask me why it's not 21,000 square feet.
My last question pertains to I didn't know, to go back to that one diagram where the entrance and the egress of the buses. So which road is going in, which road is coming out? Or are they doing it?
Currently, the plan is for the buses to come off, to come off of the highway here, enter this first access road, come through the fuel station and the bus wash if needed, around the back of the building and park either here or here. From here, they can go backward or forward, but the plan is for them to come out and exit this way.
So my question pertains to the Albion Road. There's a hill just west of that egress
Just
road.
past that, yes.
And then traffic, there's been some fatalities on that road. Is the city going to look at this plan and say we need a flashing red light or something?
The city did not require us to do a traffic study for this location. I don't know the reason why. Do you know why they didn't require it?
I didn't think the traffic impact was going to be that great. They will, when we go through site plan review with the city, they may very well come up with some of those recommendations. So that is a possibility.
That hill presents a problem with traffic.
It does have some level reduced sight lines, but my understanding is there's quite a long distance of that you have between that westerly driveway, the one that we're showing is the egress driveway, and that crest of that hill. So there's quite a stretch there. Telling drivers on Albion Road to slow down that's something that needs to be done. And so we may very well be approached by the city asking them to do some improvements or some signage like that, and not to reasonably quick.
Your site is actually quite close to the intersection. So It's my assumption they should be slowing down anyway. They are coming to a stop sign. Your site is quite close to it. There's not much different distance between the existing intersection and your first access.
Is there gonna be any, like, fencing or any sort of security, like, around the perimeter, or?
We have talked about that preliminarily, and I think it will be something about that.
I have a question also that we probably haven't gotten to this level yet, but I'm just curious. We're reviewing a policy tonight, 6810, energy management, education, and conservation. Are we thinking ahead about what alternative energy sources will be incorporated?
I will start. I will start by actually saying that Bob and I are in the process of finalizing another application with the Washington State Department of Energy for an electric school bus that would pay $325,000 towards the cost of an electric school bus. Electric school buses are close to $400,000. By the way, do not get your hopes up, because part of the grant gives points to communities that are adversely impacted by diesel exhaust. We are not one of those communities. King, Pierce, Spokane County. So, but what the heck?
Thank you for putting us in.
We are also having Design West work with their electrical engineer to make sure that we have enough capacity of electrical infrastructure in the building to add charging stations down the road and have a pathway to pull wire for those charging stations. Not install the charging stations now, but make sure that we have the infrastructure there if we need to add those charging stations later. That's what I leave out.
To further expand on that, we've also talked about, you have a lot of flat roof space. We've preliminarily talked about also with our electrical and structural engineering, structuring portions of your roof to be able to handle a large field of photovoltaics.
Thank you.
We started those discussions, so we have, it may be financially outside of your possibility, but we can gear you up for it for when you can. We can make the structure robust enough to be able to handle that whenever.
You never know when there might be a grant from a Vista.
Correct.
So we're going to set it up so we can accept it in the future if we can.
Could we, whenever you present the final design, can you tell us the best option for that? I mean, as far as, just so that we can have it.
Most definitely.
Thank you.
So the one thing I do want to interject here, based on your question to Amy, have you ever designed a transportation center? So Design West has done a school transportation center at Columbia Burbank, and then they have been extremely involved in the Pullman Transit transportation center design, including their fueling stations. So they, as a team, Amy's not up here all by herself. She has a big team. As a team, they have a lot of experience with that.
Can you mention Dax's experience?
And Dax Lunston from CSG has, including Moses Lake, including Freeman, a lot of experience.
I think he's done 7.
Yeah, yes. And he knows all the exact words to use or not use in the application to the state to increase your chances of getting the grant.
That's the person you want to know right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the one thing I will tell you is that this is something that would probably be beneficial to Design West if you were willing to consider moving this to an action item, as opposed to waiting until mid-January, so that they would know and they could start taking those next steps, as opposed to doing those next steps on eggshells. If that's something you would consider.
I'll move that we move schematic design for Whitman County Transportation Cooperative to an action item.
Second. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we move this discussion item, schematic design for Whitman County Transportation Cooperative, to an action item this evening. Is there any discussion of this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right, it is now an action item.
I will move that we approve the design for Whitman County Transportation Cooperative.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the schematic design for Whitman County Transportation Cooperative. Is there any discussion of this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right. Your schematic design is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great work.
All right. We're going to be planting a lot of trees. Okay. Next discussion item this evening is elect board president and vice president for the next year, 2020, presented by Superintendent Maxwell.
Well, thank you very much. It's that time of the season, so.
Very exciting time.
Very exciting time. So just a little, I'm going to go over the exec summary and just a couple of documents quickly. So board members serve 2-year terms, as you know, as president or vice president, according to your rotation schedule, which has been updated in your packet, by the way. Susan Weed will start her regular term and serve as president for 2020 and 2021. Jim Everman will serve as vice president for 2020 and 2021. And then if you would like to go out even further, 2022, 2023, Jim Everman is scheduled to be board president, and Nathan Roberts will be scheduled to serve as vice president.
Is this something that would be benefit by moving to an action item this evening?
Well, by our policy, I will read it. Welcome and introduction of newly elected board member president. We call for a nomination of the president. It's an election of the president by roll call, an election of the vice president by roll call.
Yes, I don't think we need to approve, we just need to do it, right?
You just need to do it. But you technically should move it from a discussion to an action item.
Well, I move that we move the election to an action item this evening.
Second. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we move this discussion item, elect board president and vice president for 2020 to an action item this evening. Is there any further discussion?
Why is it called an election when it's just sort of an appointment?
A rotation.
So I think because of I think our district has done it on a rotation basis. Some other boards do not do a rotation. You actually do a election. So we might want in the future redo our
Well, that
wording.
means, see, somebody else could nominate somebody else, and I could just.
I would like to nominate Susan Weed for president.
That's not what I meant.
Okay, so we're right now, did we approve moving it to an action item, or are we still discussing it?
We're still in discussion.
That was my discussion.
Yes, okay. Thank you for contributing to the discussion.
Oh.
Is there any further discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, so it's now an action item.
So we need a motion for the call for election of the president by roll call.
I move that we call for an election of the president by roll call. Second.
Okay.
It's there.
It's been moved and seconded that we elect Susan Weed as.
I didn't take a roll call.
Okay, so Director Everman?
Yes. Aye.
Director Everman?
Yes.
Director Roberts?
Yes.
Director Weed?
Oh, I'll abstain, I can't vote for myself.
Okay.
All right, I guess because I have no option, because it's going to happen, I'll vote yes.
Okay, thank you. So that motion is approved.
I'll make the motion for vice president.
Okay,
I will move that we elect Jim Everman as vice president.
Second.
thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we elect Jim Everman as vice president for 2020. Take the same voice roll call vote. Director Tanner?
Yes.
Director Everman?
Yes.
Director Roberts?
Yes.
Director Weed?
Yes.
Okay, that bit of business is done. Okay, thank you.
Congratulations. You'll begin your term in January.
Does anyone need a recess here? Okay. You were actually looking uncomfortable. So,
Legs are getting numb.
okay.
So long.
Is there,
You can take a 5-minute
I request a 5-minute recess.
okay, do we need a motion for that, or is it just
You
a?
can just take it.
Okay, yes, let's have a 5-minute recess. So, yeah, okay.
So we'll regather back.
Sounds good.
Jim,
We're not ready.
Jim. Okay. We're continuing the meeting now. Yes, I call to order. Okay. The next discussion item this evening is item C, Style Guide for Pullman School District Policies and Procedures, and I'm the presenter of
Mark's
this.
gonna get up here and talk to us.
So, I assume you've read this, but basically in a nutshell, we're working with all these WASDA model policies. The WASDA model policies themselves have various inconsistencies in them, ranging from capitalization to certain key phrases that are used in lots of policies differently, to the numbering systems, to just the order that things are presented in, which over time gets really confusing and annoying when you're reading a lot of policies because they're just different from time to time. And so I proposed this idea as something that we could basically empower staff who are handling their policy, whether it's someone like Roberta who might be editing their own, or someone like Courtney who might be assisting with these processes, to just say clean them all up and do it this way. So could you go to the, yeah. So the content that's covered in the style guide is, Susan, the thing you've always advocated for is just first of all, make it about Pullman. So just add the preamble. That would be a standing thing that would then happen to all WASDA model policies. That's our practice already. But this is just setting it out, saying that it will be done. Capitalization, we're basically talking about just adhering to the Chicago Manual of Style. You could propose a different style of capitalization, but the key is we want to have a consistency. Yeah, so if you guys don't like this model, we could do it differently, but the idea is to have a model for how to do it. Pronouns, really trying to avoid the he, she, his, her thing. It's really, you don't even need it. You can say superintendent for a designee. So you can just avoid that. Having them be presented in the font, which has been the practice, but of course, WASDA model policies don't typically come in our standard font that we have been using. Again, it could be a different font, but this is just what our current practice is. Then there's a suggested order for references, a suggested order for hierarchical headings, classifications, and a guideline added in there for kind of the work that would be done, how we would prioritize policy work. I can't remember if the board has heard before, but yeah, Courtney's got this whole master plan charted out for how to really go through all of the policies and clean them up. And so a document like this could really, yes, help her to just know exactly what to do before even bringing it to the board. So that's the concept.
Could you go back up a little bit, Allison?
It's Bob, but yes.
Again.
Yes.
Oh, referencing the wax, things
Oh.
like that.
Yeah, references, yep.
That would be under legal references?
Yes.
Yeah, that would come under legal.
Okay,
And note the cross references,
yeah.
because sometimes it's so hard to.
That is, because they're not linked together, it's very helpful to know what the cross references are.
And with adoption date, you don't necessarily need version number, because sometimes there's different versions.
Typically, we do a revised date, and historically, we have it filed. One of the things we talked about under cross-references, rather than get too lengthy, because some will only have a policy. If it has a policy and a procedure, we won't list it twice. We'll just have policy number XXX. If there is a procedure, we'll have a /P behind it. If there's no /P, it means there's the cross-reference, there's only a policy or no procedure.
Honestly, I think with something like this, you have to try it out for a period of time.
It's a working
6
document.
months or something like that, and you'll find out there's things that we aren't going to work or things that should be added because it's going to consistently come up, but it's just a place to start.
One thing that, if it's not overly burdensome, hyperlinking the cross-references so that you can just click through to the new policy. I think just for constituents looking at the policies would be very helpful for them to just kind of follow through. And so I mean, I know that's kind of difficult, you know, I don't know exactly the logistics, but.
Because then the second you change out one of them, it's going to break the link entirely. So you would have to know where it's linked in every policy and relink it every time we update it.
Okay, yeah, as long as you don't change the file name, it shouldn't break the link, right?
But WACs are also super easy to just cut and paste.
Yeah, but I don't think people understand
Oh.
just WACs in general. I've tried to even mention them, and they glaze over completely. And just so having, and I know, but I mean, this is, like I said, if it's too much trouble, you know, that's maybe a version 2 or something, but just maybe consider.
If they care enough, they'll find it.
Well, no, we have to facilitate the access to information.
That's an interesting thing that you bring up. I have long advocated for having links to our own, like if our policy says, here's where you can find this on our website,
Right.
I think that's super helpful, and that is something that we should do.
Because the website right now is.
But when it's linking to external websites.
Oh, no, I meant linking into our policy, so when you
Oh,
reference
okay.
a policy in the document, like saying this covers, you know, this is covered in the following policy.
I see.
Because honestly, the WACs I think would change, but as long as we don't change our policy names, those links would all stay active.
But sometimes they do change names, because I just had a couple that the names changed,
Yeah.
and that's why we're having to update them.
So, and I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but if you use a generic file name, like the number series, and then just change the content of the document, but not the number series.
Like we just replace.
Yeah, you just replace the content, but leave the file name itself the same. You would never have to change a hyperlink. I mean, I would just say.
Yeah, I could try it.
Okay, you know, no, like I said, if it's too much, it's something that would be a wish, but
Well,
not a
that could be like
requirement.
phase 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you
Like
were
maybe,
saying.
you know, once you finish all this, you have all this